This is The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing by Just Amaru, MD. We are in Chapter 17, and this is video number 3. When the prison camp inmate finds friends whose faith and strength of character are greater than his life becomes more bearable to him. Through mere association with others, he can better face the horrors without. Mutual love and common hate, both may be equally stimulating. Renewed human contact changes his inherent fear into confidence in at least one other person. When this grows into some identity with an active, working team, the temporary loss of inner strength is gone. When he does not find such a group or personality to identify with, the prison guard and his foreign ideology may take over. It must be said that the stimulating morale-boosting idea is nearly always a moral idea, an ethical evaluation, faith in goodness, justice, freedom, peace, and future harmony. Even the most cynical dictator needs the help of moral ideas to raise the morale of those submissive to his regime. If he cannot give them at least the illusion of peace and freedom in addition to prospects for future wealth, he reduces them to dull, apathetic followers. At the entrance of the Nazi concentration camps were large signs bearing the cynical slogan, Arbeit macht frei, work makes man free. This may not have fooled the inmates, but it gave the German people outside the camps a way of justifying their inhuman behavior. The need for moral justification, which is felt by even the most ruthless tyrants, proves how deeply alive these ideas of morality are in man. The more a man lives in marginal and torturous situations, the greater is his need for supportive moral values and their stimulating action. In general, we may say that there are 3 influences under which the unbearable becomes bearable. Again, in the first place, one must have faith. This can be simple faith in religious or ethical values, or faith in humanity, or faith in the stability of one's own society, or faith in one's own goals. In the second place, the victim must feel that in spite of the disaster which has overtaken him and turned him into an outcast, he is wanted and needed somewhere on this earth. In the third place, there must be understanding, not sophisticated book knowledge, but simple, even intuitive, psychological understandings of the motivations of the enemy and his deluded drives. Those who cannot understand and who are too perplexed break down first. Anti-brainwashing training has to be done very thoroughly. It is true that inner defenses can be built against thought control and against the daily barrage of suggestions. With the help of good and repeated instruction, people can be made familiar with the concepts. Perceptual defenses are then built up. We learn to detect the false propaganda and we do not listen to it. Even though part of the propagandistic suggestions leak through these perceptual defenses and creep unobtrusively into our opinions, all advertising is based on this leakage. It cannot be stressed enough that full knowledge of the enemy's methods gives us more strength to resist. Several psychologists have told me how, under the frightful circumstances of life in the Nazi concentration camps, they felt sustained by their science. It gave them perspective and made it possible for them to see their own suffering from a greater distance. It was the philosophical attitude of the inquisitive mind that fortified their inner strength. Still, there are only a few stories of those who could not be broken down by the process of communist brainwashing. Such a hard-boiled revolutionary as the Spaniard El Campesino, for one, was able to stand it. Gonzales and Gorkin. He knew the tricks of the totalitarians. It is also possible that they might not have thought him important enough to waste too much time and effort on him. After all, he could always be sent to a concentration camp to waste away. It must be repeated that any kind of illicit group formation in the camps, no matter how dangerous, immediately gave the individual a sense of being protected. Most of those who resisted cooperation and group membership and worked on their own succumbed to despair and defeat. Those who betrayed their comrades usually did so after they had gone through a long period of isolation, not necessarily enforced, but often caused by their own peculiar character structure. Human contact with a trusted source is needed more than bread to keep the spirit of freedom and belonging alive. During the Second World War, the anti-Nazi underground lived on the daily radio news from free England. Even now there are people in enslavement and distress who live on the few communications we are able to transmit to them. The Voice of America and Radio Free Europe have a tremendous morale-boosting function in countries where the totalitarian era leads to despair. In our present-day fight against brainwashing, intelligent preparation for what the prisoner has to expect and simple understanding of the enemy's tactics are the greatest aid. In the first place, this will undermine the enemy's political strategy. Nobody will believe his deceitful accusations. Let me break for just a moment so I can go make my tea, and I'll be right back. Don't go away. Okay, I'm back. Let's see. In the second place, victims of brainwashing will no longer suffer from the paralyzing bewilderment of those who are suddenly caught by an unfamiliar situation. Perhaps, too, we should advise our soldiers under duress to confess too much, to confuse the inquisitor, and to take over the enemy's strategy of confusion, lying, and deceit to bring him to frustration. This suggestion was also made by Rear Admiral D.V. Gallery of the United States Navy, and this was printed in the Saturday Evening Post, January 22nd, 1955. In cases where victims of menticide have done this, the inquisitors have often begged their victims to become rational again. The torturer himself is disturbed and upset by the feigned craziness of his victim. Of the greatest importance is the victim's awareness that other people know and understand what is happening, that there is a home front that is acquainted with this lonely struggle and torture. If he does succumb, he should know that others understand that he cannot be held completely responsible for his behavior. His brain wanted to resist, his mind wanted to say no, but in the end, everything in his body acted against him. It is an eerie and strange experience. Awareness of the fact that awareness of the fact that against one's will, one has lost the freedom of mental action. It is an experience which enough pressure can make familiar to most men. Are the effects of brainwashing only temporary? There is a difference between young people whose thoughts are still likely to be molded into permanent patterns of thinking and adults whose patterns are already formed by a free education. In mature people, brainwashing is an artificial nightmare they can often shed the moment they return to free territory. In some, it may leave long-lasting scars of depression and humiliation, but gradually the spell subsides in an atmosphere where freedom reigns. During and directly after the Second World War, those members of the resistance who had lost their bearings under the influence of the Nazi terror made it necessary for psychiatrists to face a new problem, that of a temporarily changed personality. Obviously, the terror in prisons and concentration camps had not only made meek collaborators of a certain few, but they came out of their ordeal as lost souls, full of guilt and remorse and unable to face themselves as valid citizens. Even the honorable official exoneration of responsibility granted to them by a special court was not always able to repair their self-esteem. Before accepting themselves, they had to go through a slow and difficult psychological process of undoing the nightmarish mental confusion into which they were thrown. During psychotherapy, several of them had to recall and experience once more the terror they had suffered. Their initial struggle to resist the mental dinning of their inquisitors, the gradual paralysis of will, their final surrender. It was a subtle inner battle between their feelings of guilt and the wish to reassert themselves. Emotional outbursts were followed by thoughts of suicide as a final flight from their shame. After they had vented their pent-up emotions, the therapist was able to convince them that everybody has his physical and psychological limits of endurance. From this point on, they could express themselves freely as independent human beings with a mixture of both negative and positive qualities. And that's where I'll end this. And we are reading in chapter 17. We're in the rape of the mind, and I'll see you in the concluding video of chapter 17. Hopefully, the concluding video. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be tight. See you there.